We are live, Mr. Chair.
We're live. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nations in Treaty 3 territory. I'll introduce the panel members. I'm Marcel Larondo. I'll be chairing. Bill Marzit is online, and Richard Whitebread is online. Our assessment department here today is Kim Wong, and Jaswinder Kumar is our secretary. We'll be hearing applications for revision of assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and when speaking to the matter must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessment of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council as independent of it and city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so is included with your board order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item. On the docket today, the session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 on our docket today. Mr. Kumar, please affirm the assessor and the applicant's testimony. We'll be starting with number 5 because the other gentlemen aren't here yet. Number 5, Mr. Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Kim Wong.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Mark Newman.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Wong, you will read it on the record for us, please.
The subject property is 201 Princess Street. The roll number is 130-714-62500. Did you want me to just read the roll number, or did you want me to proceed?
Proceed.
This is a residential apartment block that has a daycare in it. It was built in 1986, and it has 111 units with 67 indoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. It is in the Chinatown area. On page 4 and 5 are some pictures of the subject property. These pictures were taken from the management company's website.
Part B.
On page 6 is our income valuation summary. For the apartment, we use an average rent of $995 to get a potential income of $1,325,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $1,283,000. And we used a 47% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $673,000, capped at 5.75 or 5.7% of an estimated market value of $11,824,000. The retail income stream is beside it. estimating their net operating income to be 40,000 and capped at 8.6%. The estimated market value is 470,000. On page 7 is information on the subject property. There's, for the apartment, there's 111 suites. For the retail area, it's 3,000 square feet. At the bottom of page 7 are some expense comparables. The subject property is operated by Winnipeg Chinatown Nonprofit Housing Authority Corporation. So I believe we should be looking towards the market for valuation. So at the bottom of page 7 are some expense comparables showing that the expenses might range from 43 to 50%, and this supports the 47% that we've applied, that the model has applied. On page 8 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. Might even be a little bit on the low side. On page 9 are some comparable leases that range from $13 to $17. It supports the $15 that that the model has applied. On page 10 is information on how we derived our cap rates, with the majority of them ranging from 4.8 to 5.6%. On page 11 are some cap rate sales to substantiate our model. Those sales, they range from 3.6% to 5.74%. On page 12 and 13 is some Altus cap rate information. On page 15 is the mailer that was submitted by the owner. On page 17 are some our market rents from CMHC. Using the rents from CMHC, the indicated market potential for the subject property is $1,681,000, and the model has estimated $1,325,000. So the CMHC market rents support something higher than what the model has estimated. So the model rents and expenses are supported by the market. The model cap rate is also supported by the market. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $12,294,000.
Any questions, Mark?
Yes. And let me indicate to the panel that we're not contesting the valuation of the exempt daycare portion. So let me just put that in everyone's mind. Mr. Wong, good morning. Let's as you've indicated, this property is, you've described it as being in Chinatown. It's got a Princess address. And of course, at one time, it was adjacent to the public safety building, which is now gone, correct?
Yes.
And at page 6 is the valuation, and it's completely model driven, correct?
Yes.
So then we go to page 8, and you've got a set of comparables there. And I just want to discuss those briefly. 66 Donald, that's the building sometimes known as Chateau 100, correct?
I'm not sure.
It's the large apartment building that is immediately south of Broadway on the west side of Donald, correct?
Potentially.
Potentially, okay.
I'm not sure. You're asking me something that I'm not totally sure about, so.
All right, that's fine. Do you know anything about the amenities in that building?
I do not.
Okay. If I suggested to you that it's got a gym, it's got sauna, it's got a squash court, you're not in a position to say one way or another?
No.
All right. 230 Princess. So that's an old warehouse building that's been redone. Are you aware of that?
No.
And then similarly, if I address with you the amenities present in the building, you're not going to be in a position to speak to that as well, I gather.
Well, I don't believe so.
Okay. And so would it be the case that for 61 Edmonton and that for 480 Charles, you're not in a position to speak to the amenities in any of these buildings? Is that fair?
I think so.
Okay. So let's jump ahead then. And I'm not contesting capitalization rate in this case, so I'm not going to ask questions at this point on page 12 or page 13 of the assessor's brief. I will in some subsequent hearings. Page 16, of course, is the questionnaire, as you made reference to. This property is subject to rent control, is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you agree that rent control limits the amount of increases that a landlord can make to the rent?
Yes.
And page 17, you've indicated this is CMHC data, and that's for the Centennial area. The Centennial area also includes, for example, Waterfront Drive, correct?
Believe so, yes.
And so the rents that are reflected here for the Centennial area, they're also going to include all of the new development that's occurred along Waterfront Drive, correct?
I believe so, but it would also include the older stock as well.
I understand that. Okay, let's leave it there. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Bill, any questions?
Yes, is your rent income supported by the actuals that the client has provided?
It doesn't. The income that would according to their mailer, their income potential is $1,155,000, which is lower. But this property is a nonprofit, and so I believe it's operating as a nonprofit, which would not be a good representation of market. And so it is lower, but I believe it's not representative of a market value.
Okay, so what is the gross potential then income that you have on the model?
$1,325,000.
$1,325,000. Okay, no further questions.
Richard, any questions?
Just a quick one. Are the tenants in this building, is it classed as an assisted living building?
Pardon me?
Is the building classed as assisted living and people are receiving assistance or the subsidized rents in this building?
It's not an assisted living.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. We'll move on to your presentation, Mark.
Thank you. So let me start a little bit with some of the questions I was asking the assessor. The assessor's group of rent comparables. So I've investigated all of these buildings. 66 Donald is the building, sometimes known as Chateau 100. It's immediately south of Broadway on the west side of Donald. From an amenity perspective, it's got a squash court, it's got a gym, it's got a sauna, it's got indoor parking, obviously. 230 Princess, old warehouse redone, gym, vaulted ceilings in the units. It's what I would call a character building in the sense that the wood beams, the brick walls, all of that is part of the decor, dishwasher, central air in these units. 61 Edmonton, somewhat of a lesser quality, but it's got all utilities, including cable, are included. And then lastly, 480 Charles, Olympic Tower, all utilities, dishwasher, air conditioning, all part of these comparables. The reason I mention that, of course, is to make a comparison to the subject. The subject does not have central air. It also does not generally have window air conditioner units. Many apartment buildings, of course, will, as a matter of course, and universally have window air conditioning units. This building does not. If individual tenants wish to put an air conditioner in, they can do so, but of course that's at their cost. But these are not supplied as part of the building. The assessor made mention of 67 underground parking stalls. To be clear, those parking stalls are on a separate roll. They're not part of this roll. In terms of amenities, there's no gym. There is a common room, so I acknowledge that. But certainly, in terms of amenities, this building is of lesser quality than the comparables the assessor has brought forward. The assessor has made mention of the fact that this is a nonprofit building. This building is managed by Ash Management. It operates on a market rent basis. The location offers disadvantages to this property, I'll suggest, and the rents reflected in the questionnaire provided are the rents that are being achieved. The property, of course, is subject to rent control. And of course, you can't just jump the rents, ignoring rent control. That's not permissible unless you do a major rehabilitation on the building, and that's not happening on this building. So our primary issue is the rents. I have concerns about the capitalization rate, driven substantially by the location of this building. But as I have indicated in my brief, I am prepared to leave the capitalization rate where it is and similarly leave the expense ratio where it is, but on the basis that the appropriate adjustment to the rents should be made. Page 10 of my submission is the calculation of value. And you can see that I'm coming to a value on the apartment building of $10,180,000 compared to the assessor's $11,823,000. And again, I think really the sole issue here this morning is the rents. And you've heard what I have had to say about the comparables that are being relied upon. The rents in place are the market for this building, I'll suggest, subject to rent control, so that can't be ignored, and subject to questions. That's my submission.
Ken, do you have any questions? Cam, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Richard, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Bill?
I do not have any questions.
Okay, so the 10 million would just be the value for that, and then you'd add the daycare.
That's correct.
You had put.
At 470,
That was what?
$470,000.
Yeah.
Sorry, I guess maybe I do have one question.
There you go.
Is this property operated as a nonprofit?
Well, the original ownership structure, its creation was as part of a Chinatown themed redevelopment around the building. But it's similar to what I would call many of the life lease properties, where the sponsor is the Lions Club, for example, or a similar organization. But at the end of the day, the building has to operate And Ash Management, as I've indicated, manages it, and they manage it to be profitable and create cash flow for the sponsoring organization.
Is the sponsoring organization looking for a profit?
Yes, to fund their other activities.
Is there, I guess, any information on that in your brief?
There is not.
So do you think a nonprofit entity would operate the same as a market for-profit entity?
Again, they were the sponsor that created the development, the project. But yes,
So you're saying a nonprofit would operate the same as a for-profit?
in the context of this building, yes.
That would be all my questions.
So on their sheet, their sheets don't actually show whether they made a profit on anything or not, do they?
The questionnaire,
Yeah.
no.
I've got no further questions on this matter. We'll move on to the next property of number 6, 875 Corden Avenue. When you are ready.
Okay, the subject property is 875 Corden Avenue. The roll number is 120-228-99000. It's a residential apartment, multi-use property. That's 3 stories high. It was built in 1954, and the year built range from 1954 to 1995. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 are some interior photos. Once again, these are from pictures from the property management's website. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $850 for the apartment to get a potential income of $193,000. We used a 4.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $185,000. And we used a 49% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $92,000. Capped at 5.1%, we have an estimated market value of $1,822,000. The retail component has a net operating income of $55,000 and capped at 6.55%. We have an estimated market value of $843,000 for the retail component. On page 6 is information on the rates that were used for the apartment and for the retail space. $850 for the apartment and approximately $21 or $22 for the retail space. On page 7 are some rent comparables for the apartment showing that the rents that have been applied are in line with what's in the market. On page 8 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. You can see in 2020, their total incomes of $276,000. Their expenses are $202,000. But if you remove their mortgage and their mortgage expense and and add some miscellaneous expense back into it. Their expenses are about 154,000 for 2020, and their income for 2020 is about 122,000. If you look at their 2019 income, it was about 171,000. So there's some big swings there. To try to smooth out their swings, at the bottom chart, I averaged their income, which works out to be 283,000, and their average their expenses, which is about 135,000, giving a estimated net operating income of about 147,000. The estimated income of 147,000 supports the model net operating income of about 148,000. On page 9 are the subject leases for the property. See the subject, they're taking in $21 to $28 for their units. Their potential rent is about 66,000, and this supports the model potential rent of about 61,000. And at the bottom are some comparable lease rates, which supports the model rates as well. On page 10 and 11 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales to substantiate the model. On page 12 and 13 is some Altus cap rate information. On page 15 to 17 is the income statement provided by the owner. So when you look at the actual income, the actual income supports the model income, and with regards to the apartment and the commercial portion as well. So that being the case, I ask you maintain the assessed value at $2,665,000.
Mark, do you have any questions?
I do. So page 1 of your brief, in terms of actual year built, am I correct that the apartment building was built in 1954 and that the commercial space along the frontage was added in 1994? Is that your understanding?
I'm not 100% sure, but I would believe that.
And looking at your photo, you can see that on page 3, lower photo, you can see that the commercial space essentially juts out from the front of the building along the sidewalk. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. So, and this building's been given an effective age of 1964 in terms of the apartment building, I'll suggest, but whichever way you look at it, this is certainly, as we sit here today, an apartment building, at least from an effective age, almost 50 years old, and potentially in terms of from when built, approximately 60 years old, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, and I'll indicate to the panel that I'm not contesting the calculation of the net operating income, so you won't hear questions from me in relation to that. But I'm going to skip ahead then to page 10 because I want to address the capitalization rates. And so what we have here, Mr. Wong, is we have two different capitalization rates. We have 5.1% for the apartment, and we have 6.55% for the commercial, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Wong, I've certainly known you for a number of years through appearances at this tribunal, but how long have you been an assessor?
Since 2000, and I've been with the department since 2009.
And again, in the context I've known you, it's always been in the context of apartment buildings. Is that sort of where you have specialized since working with the department?
I've been working with the apartment group for the whole time that I've been with the assessment department.
Okay. And would it be fair for me to say from your last answer that you really haven't done work in the context of commercial properties and more particularly retail properties?
Only the ones that have been attached to apartment buildings.
Okay. And so, and in the case of this property, and I think the one we're going to come to next, the commercial portion of the valuation is completely model driven, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the city's capitalization rate chart on page 10. So let's just look at the retail section for a moment. I think we agree that this property is none of a regional, a power center, or a community shopping center. Do we agree?
Likely, yes.
Do you think it's a neighborhood or a strip, or would you say it doesn't fall into either of those categories?
I would say it could fall into either.
Okay. And if I suggested to you that one of the characteristics of whether it's a neighborhood or a strip is that these tend to be what I'll call a linear development generally. So there's a length of a building fronting on a street, very typically with parking available to the customers of that strip or neighborhood shopping center. Do you agree?
I've seen strip malls like that, yes.
Yes. And of course, this property has no parking available to its customers, correct?
Aside from street parking, no.
All right. And I agree. Your qualification is correct. But for street parking, unlike the neighborhoods and the strips, which commonly have on-site parking, this one does not. So we see a range of values put upon properties through the chart, ranging from the 20th and 80th is 6 to 6.8. But again, this one will be different than I'll suggest the majority of those because it does not have on-site parking. Agreed?
I'm not sure if it has on-site parking or not.
You're not sure. All right.
Sometimes there's like parking at beside a building, and
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if that's the case here.
Okay. Well, I'll suggest to you it's not, and I'll speak to that in my evidence, but I appreciate your uncertainty about the answer. In terms of the multifamily section of the chart on page 10, we see that this is not a high rise, correct?
No, it's not a high rise.
Right. And so we see various information with respect to low rise buildings. And the city puts its 20th and 80th percentile for all types of low rise buildings at 4.8 to 5.6. The brokers, the Colliers puts the low end at 5 and the high end at 6. And CBRE is somewhat higher at 5.25 to 5.75 and 5.5 to 5 to 6 for what they the B. Let's jump ahead then to page 11. Your chart of cap rates on page 11. It's indicated, those cap rates are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property, correct?
They're meant to substantiate the model, but you could look at them as cap rates.
Well, I don't think we can without more information, but leaving that aside for a moment, I certainly had Mr. Baracus tell me that the reason these are here is to reflect a range of capitalization rates the city has developed for various properties. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And just for a moment, the property at 700 St. Mary's, 9 units. You're aware that that property was bought and rehabilitated after purchase, right?
I'm not aware.
And what about 203 Bertrand? Are you aware that the same thing happened on that one?
No.
Okay. Do you agree with me that frequently investors will pay somewhat more for a building which they can rehabilitate because a rehabilitation gives them the ability to take it out of rent control and move the rents up, and therefore they are prepared to pay more? Do you agree with that?
That has been what I've seen to be the case. But I have also seen some cap rates that have traded at a very low cap rate where there were no renovations afterwards. So
Sure.
I've seen both.
Right. And I suppose in those cases where there are no renovations, those will be cases frequently where the building has already been rehabilitated. Do you agree?
No.
All right. All right, that's fine. Page 12. You present this. So let's just be clear on what's on page 12. This is a national market chart, correct?
Yes.
And so the national market is all major metropolitan centers across Canada, correct?
Yes.
And so that will include, for example, Toronto and Vancouver. And would you agree with me that in Toronto and Vancouver, real estate has a greater value and trades for lesser capitalization rates than Winnipeg?
Yes, but there could be other cities in there that trade at a higher cap rate as well. So
Well,
I think it's a mix.
I don't think they're doing Brandon or Portage la Prairie in the national markets chart, but thank you.
No, but it's not just Toronto and Vancouver.
Oh, I appreciate that. And it'll be Calgary and it'll be Montreal and it'll be Edmonton. I appreciate that. Page 13, this bit of information about historic apartment capitalization rates. Were you at this real estate forum on May 30th of 2018?
I was not.
Are you aware that part of this presentation noted the fact that these rates include properties purchased for rehabilitation purposes?
I've been told that to be the case by Altus, and I'm not really too sure if that disqualifies the cap rates itself, because from my experience in looking at appraisals, appraisers do use properties that were purchased for renovation as part of their cap rate analysis. So that's my experience with cap rates and renovated properties.
Okay. So this property obviously hasn't sold. In terms of amenities in this building, would you agree that it has no amenities? It's got no party room, it's got no gym, it's a dated building, it's got none of those amenities.
As far as I can tell by the looks of it, typically the 1960s apartment buildings are their typical 3-story walk-ups with no amenities, maybe potentially laundry, but that might be it.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Richard, do you have any questions?
Mm-hmm. Cam, did you visit this property?
I have walked by it several times, and I have been to the Japanese restaurant that is attached to it, but I have not inspected it for assessment purposes.
Thank you. I was just going to rephrase that. So you don't know about the roof, the windows, the HVAC, fire safety, all of those issues that could be issues in a building that is potentially 56 years old originally. You don't know whether those have been improved or not.
No, but a lot of the buildings, I guess, I would assume a lot of the buildings are in similar. Yeah, I'm not assuming this to be better or worse than any other building built in the 1960s.
my next question would be, do you know what was done to bring it to a 1995 effective date? Because I think that's in your evidence, 1964 to 1995 is the effective date.
Apparently common areas, windows, roof, kitchen, cabinets, and counters, lighting and appliances were replaced. Flooring was replaced throughout the bathrooms, hardwood flooring throughout the suites. In 2012, as per the property manager.
Is that in your evidence?
It is not. It's just from. It is from the notes that I'm reading.
Okay.
For the
but it's
subject
not-
part.
It's not been presented to the board today.
Pardon me?
It hasn't been presented to the board other than verbally just now.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just to save time on the other properties, have you inspected any of the other properties on the docket today?
I might have inspected the next property, but I would have to check.
Okay, I'll ask the question again when we get there then. But you haven't inspected the other properties on the docket.
I have not inspected Princess for assessment purposes, and I have not inspected 875 Cordon for assessment purposes.
I think for our purposes, that's the only valid inspection that we would accept.
Okay.
Do you agree?
No. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Yeah.
A visit to the rest.
If you ask me the
a visit to
specific
restaurant
question,
doesn't qualify.
yeah. If you ask me the question, did I inspect these for assessment? I would say no.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Bill, do you have any questions?
Yes, on page 1, you have property description, number of buildings 2. Am I correct in assuming then, excuse me, that's one is the residential and one is the retail?
I believe that to be true. That's how I typically look at things. When I guess if we're adding a new section to a building, and it looks like the front portion was an add-on to the existing apartment building.
They're essentially one building, though. Would you also say that's correct?
Yeah, they're attached.
They're attached. Okay. I recognize the applicant has not disputed your NOI. However, I do have a question out of curiosity on it. 16, page 16. You have the NOI or net income loss at a total of $80,933 that the client has owner has written here. That is for the whole, like both buildings, correct?
Yes.
And then you mentioned that is very close to what the model had calculated as well. I believe you said that, did you not?
I did, but the thing is that 80,000 that you're looking at, if you look on the previous page, on page 15.
Page 15. Okay, just give me a second here. Okay.
Yeah, it includes mortgage interest at the bottom of the page there.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't include that when we're determining their operating income.
So how much is that? 54,000?
Yeah. Yeah, if you look on my page, page 8.
Page 8.
It summarizes it.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, like I said, the applicant's not disputing it anyways, but okay, thank you for clarifying that. That's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Kim, on your page 10 for the capitalization rates. Let's start with the retail. Where did you slide it in? And can you give me a brief description of each one of these: regional, power center, community, neighborhood, and strip?
With regards to a description of a regional power and a community and a neighborhood and a strip,
Correct.
I wouldn't be able to give you a very accurate, a very detailed description of the only ones that I'm more familiar with would be a strip mall or a neighborhood shopping center, community shopping center.
Which one did you put this? Where did you get your number for your cap rate on this one?
I'm not sure which it's selected, but I would think that it would be either neighborhood or strip.
You don't think it would be community?
Community shopping center. I'm not. I would think that this would be on the lower part of the description in terms of property type.
Okay. No further questions. Mark, you want to make your presentation, please?
Thank you. So again, the issue here is capitalization rate. Let me track through my brief just so you can follow. If we go to page 3 of my brief, I begin with the retail and I provide some definitions to you. Cushman Wakefield, a strip plaza anchored, open air configuration of attached retail stores, might be anchored by a food or drug store. Clearly, that's not the subject property. A strip plaza non-anchored, open air configuration of attached retail store, not anchored by a grocer or drug. The Collier's definition, neighborhood or strip center, smaller to mid-sized unenclosed centers, convenient shopping for residents of the surrounding neighborhood, often anchored by smaller supermarkets, drugstores, discount stores with a mix of smaller attached retailers. So clearly these mixed use properties are a bit of a different animal. And in my view, what they are characterized by and what makes them different than the strips or the neighborhoods and is the fact that they don't have parking. They are reliant completely on street parking. There's no on-site parking. The assessor suggested maybe they can get some parking from an adjacent property. I can tell you there is no parking from an adjacent property. The adjacent property is a restaurant. They're not sharing property. And to be clear, this is immediately west of Lilac on Cordon on the north side of the street. This site has no parking for the retail. At the back, at the rear of the property, there are 11 or 12 stalls along the back lane that service the residential component. So no parking certainly available. And so the question becomes, where does this thing slot in? And I've reproduced on page 5 of my brief the assessor's chart for retail. Again, this property's been slotted at 6.55. And in fairness to Mr. Wong, and this is why I asked him the question, he's not a commercial appraiser. That's not where his background is. As he's told you throughout his time with the department, he's done apartment work. So he's reliant on the model and what's done here. And I understand that. That's not a criticism. That's just an observation. So what I'm ultimately suggesting is that if you look at this property compared to the spectrum of what's available for neighborhoods or strips, Mr. Lorengo, you asked about a community shopping center. To me, a community shopping center is always a little bit bigger and serves a broader community. Although I will tell you, I heard, and Mr. Lorengo, you might have been part of the panel a little while ago, from Jamie Fougere that the 7% capitalization rate, which the city shows as the 20th and 80th percentiles, is intended to be what I'll call the downtown malls that are part of office buildings, and that maybe they need to fix this characterization. But what we also heard is that the format of this chart is really put in place to track the brokerage reporting. That's where the descriptions and titles come from. So, but ultimately what I'm saying to you is that when you look at this retail and you compare it to the spectrum of retail properties out there, it's at the low end, I'm going to suggest to you. And to place the cap rate at 6.55, I think that's too low for the quality of the property, the lack of parking. Parking is always important in the retail world. And so ultimately what I've done is I've set the capitalization rate on the retail portion at 7%. And that's just me giving it a ranking in the scheme of things and being of the view that it needs to be at the higher end of the capitalization rate range, not in the middle, and certainly not towards the lower end. Then in terms of the apartment building, so this is 5.1. When we look at the assessor's chart of multifamily, we see that the low-rise buildings at the 20th percentile are 4.8, at the 80th percentile are 5.6. We see the brokers reporting some different numbers. Remember that the Colliers reporting always includes closing costs, and so their capitalization rate range is probably understated by 25 basis points. You can see that CBRE is reporting at the low end 5.25 and 5.5, ranging up to 5.75 and 6%. And again, this is not, in my respectful opinion, a 5.1 at the low end of the range. In other words, it's dated, it's older. The question was asked about the effective age. I think, to be clear, I think Mr. Wong's evidence was that the apartment is built in 54 and is given an effective age of 64. The commercial portion is built in 94 and is given an effective age of 95. And that's why in my questions to him, you know, any way you slice it, if we treat it as a 64 building as of 2023, it'll be 58 years old. So it's certainly getting on in years. It's a dated property. And I just think the capitalization rate needs to be higher. And so ultimately, I selected a 5.5% capitalization rate for this property, putting it higher up and more into the middle of the range. And those calculations are reflected on page 17 of my brief. And so what I would do is I would put a value rounded of $1,690,000 on the apartment building compared to the assessor's $1,822,000. So a difference of $133,000, not huge, frankly. And I would put a value rounded of $755,000 on the commercial portion.
Which page do you have that on?
Page 17. And I would put a value of $755,000 rounded on the commercial portion compared to the assessor's 843. So a difference of $88,000. Again, not huge. And it's really all about the cap rate as we discussed. That's my submission.
Ken, any questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, you know, you're saying that this building is getting on it in its age. Are there other properties that are in this area that are older, that are built in the 1900s?
I think certainly along Cordon, I would say to you no. But when you go deeper into Fort Rouge, when you go into some of the streets between Wellington Crescent and Cordon, certainly you've got some older buildings there. You say 1900s. I guess the question is how far back into the 1900s do you want to go? But are there buildings built in the 30s and 40s? I would agree with you, there are.
Okay, so so would you consider the subject property just a normal building in the area?
Maybe normal perhaps in the sense that are there buildings built in the 50s along Cordon? Absolutely, there are. Every building is normal's a big word, so.
Okay, so I guess you're trying to it seems like you're indicating that it's an old building and it should be treated differently, but and I guess I was just wondering if there are other buildings that are similar close to the subject property.
Undoubtedly, there are.
Yeah. That would be all my questions.
Richard, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Newman, do you know if the HVAC, the roof, the windows, fire safety, sort of major structural maintenance or even capital, I suppose, investments have been made in this building since 1954?
So what I will say to you is that this is an ash management property. They are reasonably diligent property managers. Of course, decisions like that are ultimately made by ownership as opposed to the property manager. But I will say to you that absolutely, when a new roof is necessary, it is done. If a repair is needed, it is done. Fire safety is certainly maintained. There's no sprinklers in this building, for example. So I'm going to say to you that it's in reasonable condition, but is it a building where all the systems have been fully replaced, brought up to something that would be built today? I would say to you, no.
So an investor would have to consider those things, would they not, if they were going to purchase this building?
Certainly, whenever an investor buys a property, the older the property, the reality is the greater the likelihood that something major will have to be invested into the property to take into account its age. It might not happen in the first year or second year or third year, but it might happen in the fifth or sixth year. But certainly there's a greater risk, I'll submit to you, in relation to older buildings in terms of those types of events.
And then, in fact, would that affect the cap rate? Possibly.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. No further questions.
Bill? Any questions?
Oh, yes, just to reiterate your presentation, you do accept the city's NOI, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the only dispute you had was with the cap rates for both buildings. So they basically, I'm not going to say are they close or are they far apart. Enough that it makes a difference in the value for sure. So that's why you're here. But anyways, what would be the, let's say, two primary points that you would make in terms of separating the city's cap rate to your proposed cap rate?
So on the apartment side, what I would say to you is that the age of the building, where it fits into the spectrum of buildings in terms of the absence of amenities, it's a very average type of building, and 5.1% used by the city is just too low on the spectrum of where the capitalization rates for multifamily are falling, and that's why I've selected 5.5%. On the commercial side, 6.55%. The city's rate is too low. I've gone with 7. And again, when you put this property on the spectrum of the commercial properties, to me, it's like a strip without parking, and a strip without parking is less valuable than a strip with parking. And that would be, in summary, my position.
And you don't believe that the city's model has reflected those points?
I do not.
Okay. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
So what was your grand total that you were requesting then?
$2,445,000.
2,000,000.
445.
445. It's my math. The city was at 2,665,000.
Yeah.
Question for you.
Yes.
On cap rates.
Yeah.
If this building were sold on the market, would it have just one cap rate for the whole building, or would it have a separate?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting question, and it's really going to be a big issue on the next property, which has got 3 cap rates. I believe, could an investor do a separate calculation for each stream? In theory, yes. And certainly they're going to have to do things a little bit differently on the commercial side, because frequently, but not always, the rents are net rents. And so the model is different than it is for the apartment, where the landlord typically absorbs all the expenses. But at the end of the day, I think they probably would do a separate calculation. The vendor won't see that. What the vendor will get is an offer, and the vendor won't know how the purchaser has modeled out a value.
So basically, when the city does their modeling and they're creating a model for cap rates, are they splitting off the retail and commercial, the retail and residential sides of a building that's being sold?
That is a good question, because of course, then we'd have to have sales of mixed use buildings, and we'd have to see how the city models their derivation of a capitalization rate. I suspect, I don't know, maybe Mr. Wong knows, that they would in fact derive separate capitalization rates for the separate components as best they could.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you for that. We're going to move on to.
Oh, Mr. Chair, can I just ask?
Sure, you can. Bill, you've got me right on time.
Okay, so Mr. Newman, you said that the total was 2,445,000, correct?
Yes.
And that's adding the value for the apartment and the retail. But you also said that you accept the city's NOI, correct?
That's correct.
So would that, the city's NOI is 55,209, and yours is 52,884, is that correct?
Yes, and I see what's happened.
Now it's almost that you're at the same value if you consider that.
Well, no, I don't think it's that much. I think the difference is it's the non-recoverable. I used a 7% non-recoverable, and I haven't gone into that. So at the end of the day, that non-recoverable, the effective on the commercial side, the effective gross income is 58,140 times 4%. It's $2,325. Divide by 0.07. The difference is $33,222. But you're correct, Mr. Moretsky.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, there's one more calculation that needs to be done there. Yeah, so the difference is again how much?
$33,222.
Right. So, but you still want to hold the 244, correct?
I'd like to, but my math wouldn't be right.
All right. Fair enough. Yeah. Thank you. No further questions.
Oh, we're gonna hold this against each other for a long time. We're moving on to item number 7. And that will be 917 St. Mary's Road. Ms. Kim, when you're ready, please. Oh, is Kim not there?
Just a little.
Kim? There you are. He's reaching for the speaker.
Off screen for a second. The subject property is 917 St. Mary's Road. This is a multi-use property with apartments and office and retail. It's 3 stories high and it was built in 2014. There are 14 suites with 20 indoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. For the apartment, we use $1,348 to get a potential income of $226,000. We use the 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $219,000, and we use the 42% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $122,000. Kept at 4.1%, we have an estimated market value of $3,070,000. And the net operating income for the office is $18,000, capped at 5.15%, for a value of $367,000. And for the retail, the NOI is $21,000, capped at 5.9% for an estimated market value of $371,000. On page 4 is information on the property, where the apartment rents are $1,348. The office rate is $9.46, and the retail rate is $17.81. On page 6 are some rent comparables. Shows the rents that we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 5 are some commercial lease rates that range from $9 to $25 to support the rates that the model has applied. On page 8, it's a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. For 2020, their income was $303,000. Their expenses were $233,000, but that included some mortgage expense. So removing the mortgage expense, their operating expenses are $145,000. And their estimated net operating income for 2020 is $158,000. To estimate the income of the net operating income of the property, I used their 2020 income of $303,000, and I averaged their expenses from 2018 to 2020 at $142,000. So their estimated operating income is about $160,000, or a little bit less than $161,000. The model has estimated $166,000. So it appears that they are a little bit lower, but it is fairly close to what the model is estimated. On page 9 and 10 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales. On page 11 is some Altus cap rate information. On page 14 is the income statements supplied by the owner. On page 15, indicates that their net rents are $9 and $17, and their potential income is $62,000, which supports the net rent of the model of $46,000. on page 6 is a list of construction costs. The property was built in 2014, and the indicated construction cost is about 3.45 million, or maybe, yeah, approximately 3.45 million. And that was back in 2015 as compared to the reference date of 2021. And that doesn't include the value of the land, or it doesn't include any value for entrepreneurial profit. So their construction cost at about 3.45 million supports the current assessed value of 3,808,000. So the 4.1% that we've applied for the apartment, it does seem a little bit low, but when you look at the overall value estimate that it has provided, it appears that it is very accurate. So the actual NOI is a little bit lower than what the model is estimated, but it is reasonably close and reasonably supports the model. The commercial rates are supported by the commercial rates that are actually in place, and the construction costs, if you were to include land value and any sort of profit associated with a development, it supports the current assessed value of 3.8 million. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at 3,808,000.
Mark, any questions?
Yes. So firstly, we're not valuing these properties on a cost basis, are we?
I think we're trying to look for a market value, and costs do come into play for newer buildings.
I'll repeat, we're not valuing this property or properties of this type on a cost basis, correct?
I think valuation is based off of 3 different approaches.
Yes. The methodology the city uses to value properties of this type is the income approach, not the cost approach. Agreed?
We have used income, but in valuation, you can use the 3 approaches to reconcile with each other.
Looking at page 4, the valuation on page 4, is all of that model driven?
I believe so. Or, yeah, I believe so.
So let's just talk about the commercial for a moment. The commercial space is on the main floor along the front of the building, correct?
Yes.
And if you look at page 5, you can see the premise details. So the first one is the apartment. Let's put that aside. The second one is what's classified as office, 2,322 square feet. And the last one is what is identified as retail, 1,382 square feet. So we've got a total of about 3,700 square feet, correct?
Yes.
And the city is taking 3,700 square feet and it's treating it as different types of investment property, correct?
We've reflected it as office and retail.
So I know that the city, for example, has a class of properties called restaurants. And they'll get valued in a certain way. The last property we did at 875, we talked about the Japanese restaurant. It doesn't get a separate value as a restaurant. All the tenants in 875 Corden were valued as simply retail. Why for this property are two separate valuations done for 2,322 square feet and then for 1,382 square feet?
I guess in the previous property, it was all retail space, and in this property, it was there is an office and retail space. The previous property didn't have office space as far as I know.
And do you think that's what an investor would do? Do you think an investor would say, I'm going to value this 2,300 square feet as an office, and I'm going to value that 1,300 square feet as retail? Do you think that's what an investor would do for a property of this type?
I can't speculate.
You can't speculate. Well, except that's what we're doing here. We're speculating, and
I can't speculate on what an investor might think.
I see. Because when we come back to your page 4, this process of separating these premises results in a capitalization rate of 5.15% for the office and 5.9% for the retail. And I'm not saying I agree with either of those, to be clear, but does it make any sense to you that premises literally and truly right beside each other in the same building would have a different capitalization rate of 0.75%?
In this particular case, I'm not really too sure, but what I can speak to is like the model is accurate with regards to when you compare, say, apartments or office or retail. It is accurate when estimating the value of properties compared to sales that have occurred.
Well, okay, I don't know what that means, but okay. Let me ask you this. And again, in fairness, Mr. Wong, you may not know, because as you've told us, you don't have a lot of experience with commercial. Do you know that the city tends to view commercial buildings, the smaller they are in size, the lower the capitalization rate is going to be? Do you know that?
I don't know that for sure, but I can see that being the case.
And so by separating these premises into two separate premises, essentially what the city is doing is creating what some might characterize as two separate buildings, each small in size. Therefore, the model is giving them each a low capitalization rate.
I'm not sure.
All right. So let's turn, as you said in your evidence, you said 4.1%, and that's the capitalization rate on the apartment building, seems a little low. I agree, it seems a little low. Let's look at your page 10. And let's look at your multifamily. There's no 4.1 number anywhere on that chart for multifamily, is there?
It would be in the lowest 20th percentile. That's where it would be.
Oh, it's hiding.
Well, as you can see, it says the 20th to the 80th percentile is 4.8 to 5.6. So there's a 20th percentile that is lower than 4.8, and there is a 20th percentile that is higher than 5.6.
Yeah, and the city used to show us what the range was. They used to give us the full range, but the city's not doing that anymore, is it?
This is what we're providing.
Right. Okay, and then let's look at your chart on page 10 again. The office component, the lowest capitalization rate there, the 20th percentile is 5.6% for suburban B. That's the lowest. Everything else goes up from there. Any idea how we get to 5.15?
Like I said, there is a 20th percentile that was lower than 5.6. That's how percentiles work.
It's hiding on us again. Okay. And do you think maybe it's because the city is treating this as a standalone small building? And that's why it's happening?
I'm not sure, but if you can clarify.
Okay. And then when we come to the retail, the city is using a cap rate of 5.9%. And again, we don't have in the city's chart in the 20th to 80th percentile of 5.9 for a strip or a neighborhood, do we?
For strip, like I said, the 20th and 80th percentile encompasses most of the cap rates. There are some cap rates that are lower than say 6, and there are some cap rates that are higher than 6.8. Just as with the first property that we heard, the apartment, the highest range or the 80th percentile is 5.6%. The cap rate for that first property that we had is 5.7%. So we do have properties that are higher than the 80th percentile, and we do have cap rates that are lower than the 20th percentile.
Right. But those cap rates, in theory, should reflect a spectrum of risk associated with the type of property. Agreed?
I'm not really too sure. As far as I have observed, the cap rate is is calculated from the net operating income against the sale price.
Okay. Just coming back to the apartment building for a moment, as we discussed earlier, sometimes people have the ability to do a rehabilitation on an apartment, take it out of rent control, increase the rents, and that makes it attractive to purchase. We talked about that earlier. Agreed?
That is a possibility, yes.
This property is a relatively new property. The rents are at market. There's no upside in doing a rehabilitation in this property, is there?
It is unlikely that they would renovate the property at this point.
Right. And therefore, there would be no upside in terms of an ability to increase the rents. Agreed?
It depends on how you would look at it.
All right. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Richard, any questions?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Bill, any questions?
Page 16. Construction.
Yes.
You had it at 3,448. I'd like to know a little bit more about this.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you very well.
So I'd like to know a little bit more about this submission about the construction cost. Is this something, who submitted this?
The property owner.
Is this the actual costs?
It's what the property owner has indicated. The actual cost might be, from my experience, they're typically higher.
So this is not an actual cost, it's an estimate?
We asked the property owner to list out their cost for the property, and this is what was returned.
I can interrupt, Bill.
Yeah.
There is a note at the top of the page that says construction cost, not including the value of land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Construction cost, meaning that's the actual cost. Is that?
That's how
It's referring to the letter.
Okay. To me, it looks like an estimate because there's rounded numbers there.
This is what the property, like we requested the construction cost for this property, and this is what the property owner returned to us. With regards to exact numbers, I'm not really too sure why they put the round numbers, but this is what they returned to us.
And they didn't know what your question was regarding when you asked them? Did they know what it was about? Or when? 2015.
We asked them for the construction cost for the property, and this is
When did you ask them though? When did you ask them for this?
at the time we put the property onto the roll. I don't have the exact date.
There is a date on the bottom of the form, Cam, January 30th, 2015. Is that helpful?
Sorry. It was assigned on January 30th, 2015. Sorry.
So one would assume the question was put before that date.
Okay, I'd like to move on from that. That's fine. Yeah, I accept what you're saying there. Just get back to the cap rate again. 4.1. So go on your cap rate study on page 9. So you said you're outside of the 20th percentile.
It's in the lowest 20th percentile.
Lowest 20th percentile. Okay. So lower than the range shown there, 4.8 to 5.6, correct?
Yes.
Now, I'm fairly new to the commercial part here, and I haven't done a ton of these, but I've done a fair amount already, and that is the first time that I've seen the cap rate outside of that range. On the lower side. It may have been on the higher side, but not on the lower side. What is so unique about this building that it would fall a fair amount lower than that 20th percentile number?
I'm not sure about how, I guess, our modeler's algorithm selected a 4.1%, but like I said, when you look at the overall value, it does appear to be accurate in representing a market value.
And why do you say that?
I say that because like the property owner spent about almost $3.5 million on it, and and that was back in 2015. If you were to try to do that today, or if you look at how the apartment market has changed from 2015 to the current reference date of 2021, the market has changed significantly from 2015 to 2021. So it has gone up, and so that's why I say that it supports the current assessed value.
You're putting a lot of weight on that construction cost submission, by the sounds of it, correct?
I mean, wouldn't anybody put a lot of weight on how much it would cost to build the property?
I don't know. Yeah, if you're asking me that question, I don't know how relevant it is.
Are you? So
I
I'm
would
sorry.
say the market value is still more important. Yeah.
Hey, Kim, he's asking the questions, you're answering them, okay?
Okay, well, basically, with regards to valuation, income is one of the approaches, and cost is also one of the approaches. And typically, when somebody does an appraisal, they might use cost, income, and they might use a direct comparison. And so, if the values are similar, great. If they're slightly different, then they reconcile the differences in value. But the cost of a property is a valid way to value a property, and yeah, that's what.
My only question is that you are putting a fair amount of weight on that aspect of your valuation.
Yeah, I would say the construction cost is fairly strong.
Okay. All right. No further questions. Thank you.
Yeah, Kim, I've never heard, what's your page 10? I've never heard this statement before that, there was numbers lower than that. And but looking at your chart on multifamily, 4.80, do you see anything in the Colliers, CRBC or Cushman that's below that number?
No,
Well, why would that be? They say low and high, or do they have some that are lower as well? Are you saying maybe they're not showing some of their numbers?
well, no. What I'm saying, what's possible is that apparently the Collier's cap rate is I'm not really too sure. The data set is different. The data set that they're using is different, and the data set that we have is applicable. Like, I'm not sure which data set that the Colliers is using, like what properties, but all I know is that the cap rates that we've calculated are based off of properties that are within the city of Winnipeg and regular apartment buildings.
Okay, so let's look at your page 10. On the bottom where it says the capitalization rate evidence. Any of those multi-use buildings? Or are they just multifamily?
I believe those ones are all just apartment buildings.
They're just apartment buildings, so they're not tied to any commercial at all.
Not as far as I know.
So they're not a very good comparison then.
They would be, well, they are apartment cap rates. With regards to finding a cap rate sale for a multi-use property, I'm not really too sure. It's the number of apartment sales is a little bit on the low side, and to be very specific in trying to find an apartment that is multi-use and then trying to fit it to all the multi-use apartments for valuation is not likely. So basically, you know, we've done the best that we can with the sales that we have available.
So if you had a multi-use building and it's sold, would there be just one cap rate on that?
I'm not sure how the modelers would do that. I'm not sure if they would break it out or if they would treat it as one cap rate. I'm not sure.
But the area for a multi-use property falls into that calculation, does it not?
For the cap rate?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not. Are you talking about?
Okay, if we take multifamily in this area here that we're talking in St. Mary's, and then move that over, let's say, to Lindenwoods or Town Center. Town Center's got a lot of these construction, retail on the bottom, apartments on the top. Would we still be seeing the same kind of cap rates in there?
I'm not sure. I think you can look at it both ways and see what the cap rates come out to.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. On with your presentation, Mr. Newman.
So I don't want to belabor this, but Mr. Moretsky, you made some comments, and I have to tell you, I was very much struck when the assessor gave his evidence, and he said 4.1% seems a little low for the apartment, but looking at the overall value, it seems accurate. And I think that became even clearer through your questions to him. I think essentially what's going on here is they are chasing the construction cost to establish value for this property. I think that's what's going on here.
I don't believe that to be the case.
Well, you're not giving evidence.
Right now, you're not giving evidence, Ken. He is. You can ask him that question when it's your turn.
So,
you know, he's giving evidence, but he's not
You
giving
can
this
ask questions on, you can't just cut him off, Ken, when he's talking. He's making his presentation right now. When he's done with his presentation, you can question it, okay?
I'm sorry, he's just talking about my evidence. He's not presenting his own.
He's making his presentation. If you disagree with it, you can rebut after he's done, okay? Otherwise, we're going to have a tete-a-tete here.
Okay.
Continue on, Mr. Newman, please.
So, and again, one can have the impression certainly that, and I think Mr. Wong has indicated he's putting a lot of weight on the construction costs to support the value. It's clear there's nowhere a 4.1% capitalization rate. It's clear it's not in any of the charts. There's no evidence to support it. I can go on and say lots more about that, but I don't think I need to. And I'm not saying this is a bad building. Don't misunderstand me. It's a newer building, but it's on St. Mary's Road, which is fine. There's nothing immediate to it in terms of retail or shops or restaurants. And when I say immediate, I mean truly adjacent. Yes, you can go a little way, one way or the other, up and down St. Mary's, and you'll find. But at the end of the day, I just respectfully, there's absolutely nothing to support this low capitalization rate. I've used a 5%. I put it at the low end of the range because it is a newer building. I acknowledge that it's certainly a reasonable building. It doesn't have a lot of extra amenities in the building, but it's certainly a reasonable building in terms of what's there. And so I've simply used a 5% capitalization rate. And if somebody thinks I'm a touch too high in that regard, then so be it. But respectfully, it's certainly not 4.1%. In terms of the commercial, and again, I come back to, I don't understand why these premises, and if you look at my brief, if you look at page 22, is a photo of the front of the building. So this is the St. Mary's front.
Page was that?
Page 22. This is the St. Mary's front of the building. And you can see that along there is, those are the two commercial premises. So they front onto St. Mary's. They're immediately adjacent to each other. So one of them is being used by a chiropractor. And that's categorized as the office. The other one is being used by a gym, Pilates. And so that's categorized as retail. Does it make any sense that that these would be treated differently, that there'd be a 75 basis point difference in capitalization rate between these two units in the building? It makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't know why this has been done. If you look again at the assessor's charts, capitalization rates, there's nothing at 5.15 in respect of office. There's nothing at 5.9 for the assessor's 20th and 80th percentiles. What is so magical about this property that it's got to come below the charts on every aspect of it? And I'll submit respectfully, there's nothing magical about this property. There's nothing overly special about this property. And so at the end of the day, and I've used, and this is page 28 and 29, sorry, 27 and 28 of my submission, I've used 6.75% as the capitalization rate. Again, that's certainly within the range for retail, and whether it's considered a strip or a neighborhood. This is not an office building. This is a building which one of the units happens to be occupied by something that might be.
Sorry, Mr. Newman. Mr. Chair, I think we lost with some of that speed.
Oh, good. I need to plug my meter.
Just take a minute.
Yeah.
We're just gonna have to recess for a minute till we find him.
Yes, Mr. Okay.
Could be on his end too.
Yeah. We're live, Mr. Chair.
We're live? We'll call the meeting back to order. Sorry about the little power failure. Mr. Newman, you were presenting.
Thank you. And I'm here today. Again, just to summarize, on the apartment side, there's no 4.1% capitalization rate anywhere. The assessor presents his national charts. And remember, those are national. The Altus 2018 Real Estate Forum chart. Again, it includes rehabilitations. It doesn't have a 4.5. This property, if it's purchased for yield because the rents are in place. There's nothing you can really do to get a big increase in the rents. On the commercial side, I put to Mr. Wong the question that is it the circumstance where the smaller the commercial building, the lower the capitalization rate tends to be. He indicates he doesn't know. I accept that. In my experience, what happens is you sometimes have small commercial buildings that are purchased by people who essentially are going to occupy them for their own purposes. Small accounting offices, small lawyer offices, small doctor offices. They buy a small building. Their investment criteria are not traditional investment criteria because they're going to use it themselves. What happens here, because these premises, the retail and the office, essentially are being treated as if they were two separate buildings. They're not, as you can plainly see from the photos. And what that does is it artificially reduces the capitalization rates. And so my view of the world simply is that this is a single commercial property. It could just as easily be all retail. It could just as easily be all office. It's all about who's occupying the premises. The retail capitalization rates, there's nothing below a 6 in the assessor's 20th and 80th percentiles. And so I've ultimately selected 6.75% for each of the office and the retail, and that ultimately reflects a total value. And this is found, my spreadsheets are found on 27, 28, and 29, but it reflects a combined value overall of $3,095,000. And it's essentially $377,000 for the combined commercial, and it's $2,517,000 for the apartment. Compared to what the assessor has done. So there's a difference at the end of the day of round numbers, about $710,000. That's my submission. Thank you.
Cameron, questions?
Yeah. Are you aware of the definition of market value in appraisal?
Yes.
And would you agree that it would be the agreed upon price between a willing seller and a willing buyer?
Yes.
And considering that you're requesting approximately 3.1 million for the property today?
Yes.
Considering that the owners probably spent over $3.5 million on the property, would they be a willing seller at $3,000,001?
I'm sure they wouldn't be, but don't forget that when people spend money on a structure, they spend it in the hope that it will appreciate in value over time, and over a long period of holding, they will get both a return on and a return of their investment. That's what the market is. The market in some ways, both office and retail, have deteriorated very badly over the last number of years for a variety of reasons, COVID not being the least of which. And so that's what's happened.
Well, you say that did you make a statement saying that the apartment market has deteriorated?
I didn't say that. I said the office and retail.
Okay. So you don't think they'd be a willing seller at 3.1 million?
They wouldn't be a happy seller.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Let's go with Bill on this one.
No, I do not have any questions.
Richard,
You're mute, Richard.
Richard, you're muted. Can't hear you.
Sorry, now you can. So I'm on page 10 of your evidence, Mr. Newman. Attributes of buildings in relation to cap rates. Buildings of the greatest number of desirable attributes will bring the lowest cap rate. These will include the following. Would you say that your building has all of these qualities?
No. So for example, quality of tenancy. It doesn't have national tenants. It's got small local tenants. It's got a mix of tenants, certainly. But if you think about retail properties, in the context of the retail world, you want a drugstore anchored property, for example, because it draws traffic. You want a grocery store anchored property because it draws traffic. And I know we're talking about very different properties when I say that, but that's why some of the brokerage make a distinction between what they call an anchored and a non-anchored property. Location, it's on St. Mary's. The quality of the site is fine. The quality of the development is fine. The demographics in the neighborhood, it's a reasonable demographic. Quality of covenant, I don't consider the covenant strong. Gyms have a bad history of failing, unfortunately, and that's what they've got in there, a gym. It's got some covered parking. It's not indoor parking, it's covered parking, but it's not customer parking. Mechanical systems are newer, strength of covenant is a repeat. So what I would say is that it certainly doesn't have all of the attributes that would put it at the higher level of the range. And that's why I've not put it at the higher level of the range.
I understand that, but you do agree that it has a number of these qualities or attributes?
It does, yes.
That's fine. Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, that'll conclude that matter. Thank you very much, Mr. Newman. We are going to move to number 1, 92 Princess. Can you swear Trevor in?
Yes.
Once we clean the room.
Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Mark, have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Steph, you can state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
You affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please sit.
Kim, when you are ready. In there. There you go.
Okay, the subject property is 90, are you going with 92 Princess?
That's correct.
Okay, the subject property is 92 Princess. The roll number is 130-609-75000. It's a multi-use property. It's an apartment multi-use property. It has a year built, it's 6 stories high and has a year built of 1903, but we have an effective year built of 1972 because the property was extensively renovated. There are 60 suites. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 are some interior pictures of the subject property. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. For the apartment, we use average rents of $1,323 to get a potential income of $953,000. We used a 4.7% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $908,000. And we used a 41% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $530,000. Capped at 5.25%, we have an estimated market value of $10,098,000. For the retail portion, the estimated net operating income is 81,000 and the cap rate is 7.4%, giving a value of 1,091,000. On page 6 is information on the number of apartments and the lease area. On page 7 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 8 are some lease comparables. Indicating a rate of approximately $12, which is in line with what the model is estimated at $11.85. On page 9 is the income statement supplied by the owner. In 2020, their income was $1,089,000. Their expenses are $1,388,000. But the expenses included some building depreciation, amortization, mortgage and principal reduction. So after making adjustments for those line items, their operating expenses are about $472,000 and their net operating income is about $616,000. The $616,000 supports the model NOI at about $611,000. On page 10 and 11 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales. On page 12 and 13 is some Altus cap rate information. On page 15 is the income statement supplied by the property owner or the property manager. If you go to my page 5, you'll notice that the total for the capitalized income is $11,189,000, and it's different than what it says on my first page of $11,578,000. Does everybody see that?
Which one? That's on the which?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's it on?
On my page 5, the total
Yeah.
for the two income streams is $11,189,000, but on my front page it says $11,578,000.
If
So-
you had,
Does everybody see that?
no, I've seen it. I must find it.
You didn't actually put that total on page 5, though.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
you have to add them up.
I did not.
If you add them up, then you get that, then you get 11 million. Okay,
So the value that I'm going to be supporting today is $11,189,000 and not the $11,578,000 on my first page.
okay. Okay, go ahead.
So when you look at their actual net operating income, it supports the model net operating income, and the model cap rate is supported by the market. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at 11 million, or I ask that you accept the revised value of 11,189,000.
Okay, Trevor, questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do have a few. So the actual year built of the subject property is 1903. And it has subsequently been renovated for multifamily use in some of the upper floors there. Seems like a rather large stretch to have an effective year built of 1972, though, when we have an original date of construction of 1903. Do you have any information on that?
I guess when you look at the calculating an effective year built, you're looking at the remaining economic life, and typically for these types of buildings, it might be about 60 years. So the effective year built, I think, is within that 60-year period of economic life.
Okay, the structure will not have been changed with the renovation, though, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Looking at, let me just look forward briefly here. I think Mr. Newman had already asked this question, so it's just more a repetition, really. But your expertise with the assessment department is in the multifamily area, correct? Not in the other areas of commercial.
I've spent my whole time with the apartment group.
Okay, great. Thank you. And looking at the front page, so we do have a reduced overall assessment. I see 11,189,000 versus 11,578. However, when we look at the page 5 and the workup for each of the categories, there is a jump in value on the apartment side that I note. Can you explain how that happened?
I think what might have happened is like the commercial areas was reduced by I'm sorry, I'm just trying to see what the I guess the lease area was reduced from 10,493 to 7,830, and so that resulted in a reduction of the commercial portion from 1,000,006 to 1,000,001. And I think what happened was the area that was reduced from the commercial got reportioned to the apartment portion, and that's why the value in the apartment went up a little bit.
So just in looking at that, there wasn't any, there were no additional suites that were added to the apartment portion of the building, though, correct? Like there was no construction done. Okay. So Was it more of a correction to the size of the commercial portion? I'm just wondering how that would get reattributed to the apartment side.
Well, I believe that it takes the lease area potentially from the total gross floor area, and the lease area shrunk, and so I think the gross floor area for the apartment portion grew, and that might have contributed to the slight increase in value.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I do have some brief rebuttal on this. I'm not sure when you would like that to be addressed.
You're rebutting his material, you mean?
Yes. Yeah, I had submitted it yesterday.
Okay, we'll finish our questioning and we'll come back to you on your rebuttal.
Sure. Those are all of my questions, really.
Okay, Bill, any questions?
Yeah. Just bear with me for a second here.
If I can go to Richard and come back to you while you're looking. Richard?
I have none. Thank you.
Okay, back to you, Bill.
No, I guess I have none. No.
Are we? I'll leave it. Let's go with your rebuttal.
Okay, may I ask one follow-up question? And it'll carry forward for all the
Sure.
properties. Okay. Actually, I'll do it on later one. That's fine. So the rebuttal document, does everybody have that there?
No.
Let's have a look.
I just put that in the folder.
Applicant's rebuttal at the
Yeah.
top.
Oh, at the top?
Yeah.
Yeah, must be at the very top. I sent you an email, Mr. Wong.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
So everybody's got it there?
They're looking.
Just give me a moment here.
Sure.
I have it checked.
Is it a 2-page rebuttal, Trevor?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Winnipeg on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
You might have to refresh, Bill.
Yeah, I'm good. I got it.
Okay, good. Go ahead. Trevor.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the document that you're looking at there, this is the workup for the subject property as of June 13th, 2022, as an owner or their agent in this case. We're able to access the City of Winnipeg's information online as to how the assessment was derived. This was downloaded on June 13th of 2022. And you can see how the workup was done there. I gather there has been, I guess, a change or an adjustment rate made subsequent to that time, but this was how the original assessment was done for the multifamily portion. As well as the retail portion. And you can see that multifamily portion was $9,950,000 at that time. With the revised modeling for the subject property being on the city's, page number 9, coming in at $10,098,000, about $150,000 higher. And I gather from the city's comments there that it was an adjustment of the retail area that was done. I guess there was an error caught there with regard to the retail area, and the retail value was adjusted on that basis of the error. Now, that would not change the apartment valuation. That space doesn't suddenly become available or additional to the apartment doesn't drive up rents or anything of that nature. So the lift in value on the apartment side is both done after the valuation has been struck. And in my view, it's been done well. I'm assuming it's model driven, but the addition of value to the apartment space is incorrect. There's no sudden lift in value that's been created due to the correction of an error, and that is my rebuttal information.
Kevin, do you have any questions on this rebuttal?
No, I think it just sort of says what is currently on the property record right now.
Richard, do you have any questions on that?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Bill?
No, not on the rebuttal. No.
No, you're good. Okay, on with your presentation.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, may I ask one question?
Yeah.
Um,
You're asking Ken?
On the rebuttal, just so I'm clear then, Trevor, you're looking at 9,950,000 for the apartment and the 1,091,000 for the retail. Is that correct?
Essentially, if that's the correction that the city has made on the retail side, yes.
Okay, so we'll be looking at an 11,041,000 value. Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Okay, on with your presentation.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So property we're dealing with is 92 Princess Street here. It was originally, as you can see from my cover page, a warehouse building in the Exchange District, and was originally built in 1903 with a slight addition done in 1913, as is the case with many warehouse buildings downtown. I believe the addition was the top two most floors. If you're looking at the exterior, you can see that they're somewhat different in style to the bottom part of the building. I believe that was the addition that was done at that time. Obviously, property has been repurposed in more recent times and renovated for apartment use in the upper floors, with the main floor remaining as commercial space. So the retail or commercial space and multifamily space are actually separated by in floors as well. So there would be no additional space that would be tacked on to the apartment property. So let's move forward. We have a total of 60 units, 31 beds, 32 bedroom units. I have some photos of the property beginning on page 4, number of exteriors, and then we move into the units themselves. Again, it's a repurposed warehouse building, heritage warehouse building. So we're looking at brick and beam type units, as you can see from the photos here. They have refinished the floors, put in kitchens, bathrooms, and bedrooms, etc., where needed. Yeah, that runs through page number 9. So that gives you an impression of the inside of the units themselves. Site is shown on page 10 and location on page 11. It is located in that West Exchange area on Princess, south of Bannatyne, on the what would be, I guess, the west side of Princess at that point. So let's move forward to the valuation. Our rental income actually ends up being somewhat higher on a gross basis than the city's.
What page do you have this on?
Page number 22 is where our summary of the income approach for the multifamily portion is. I'm just looking to save us a little bit of time here. So on page number 13, which we were on, you can see the gross rental revenue for full occupancy is $959,138, giving us an overall average rent of $1,332 per unit. This is marginally higher than what the city has projected, so we're not in dispute there. I will skip over the apartment rent portion. I've given you a study on CMHC as well as our market study on page number 14 for you to review if you wish. Vacancy, we're not disputing. And the expenses for the property we do differ on that aspect of the valuation. Let's move forward to page number 16, and I've given you a 3-year history of the expenses for the property as reported to the city, 2019 through 2021 as of the valuation date. And you can see how we've done our stabilization. Where appropriate, we've used averages, either 2-year or 3-year if information was missing from 2019, which in some cases it is. We've applied the standard 5% of effective gross income for property management, which is basically exactly what they were running. And the repair and maintenance, I believe, comes in under a typical market norm that we've gone with their existing R&M in the property. So our final expense amount comes to $424,860 after stabilization. This is the true operation of the property, so it's not going to cost you either more or less than this based on market norms. Property is professionally managed, so they're not either spending unnecessary amounts on repair and maintenance or overheating the property, etc. What I will point out is that we have a structure from 1903, so you're inherently going to have some additional costs related to that. These heritage buildings are generally not insulated. I can attest to that. We have our office in one of them just down the road here. It's rather chilly in the wintertime and somewhat toasty in the summer. This will not be significantly different. There's no effective way to insulate them. So that is one aspect of costs that you will face in properties of this vintage. There being other costs as well with properties of that age. Happy to answer any questions on that you may have. Now, let's move on to capitalization rate. As discussed in earlier hearings here today, we have the two of the main commercial brokerages, Colliers and CB Richard Ellis, presenting their cap rate studies for the Winnipeg market. I've summarized these on pages 18 through 20 and given you a 3-year timeline for those. So essentially, we're looking at stable conditions in the multifamily market. There's not going to be anything in particular that represents a heritage multifamily conversion such as the subject. This doesn't fall within either low rise or high rise. It's not your traditional investment asset that investors are looking for. So it's not necessarily going to fall within their categorizations either. I will briefly sum up where in the case of Colliers between 2016 in 2016, we're looking at high-rise apartments between 5 and 5.75, 2018 through and 2020, 5 to 6%. So a slight lift at the upper end. Low-rise apartments, they're stating 5.25% to 6% in 2016 and 5 to 6% in 2018 and 2020. So bottom end of their range there being 5 or 5.25%. Moving forward to CB Richard Ellis, much the same. For Winnipeg, they have 5 to 5.75% for high-rise Bs in 2016, 5.5% at the low end to 6% at the high end for low rises. Identical in 2018, and then in 2020 on page number 20, you can see that they're indicating 5 to 5.5% for high-rise Bs, 5.25% to 6% for low-rise properties overall. So that's the ranges that two of the main commercial brokerages are providing based on their experience in the marketplace. Certainly well-respected and knowledgeable participants in the Winnipeg market. So moving beyond that, looking at my capitalization rate study as presented on page 17, this is really what we're focusing on here. The brokerages are provided as additional support. If you look at the transactions here, these are all properties purchased for their in-place investment, or rather their in-place return. They were not bought for renovation. These properties were bought on the basis of their existing income and expense. So they're true capitalization rate sales. They range between 2018 and 2021 in date, and obviously range in size, location, age of construction, etc. What we're presenting here is an overall view of the multifamily investment market in Winnipeg in the subject time frame. So if you look at the properties presented, we have a range of 4.95% at the very low end of the range up to the very high end of the range at 7.9%. Now, those are the extreme ends of the range. Typically, when we look at the majority of the sales here, we're looking at transactions in the range of 5.25% to roughly 5.75% for the majority of transactions in the marketplace. These would be, generally your either 3-story walk-ups or tower properties. We're not looking at conversions of warehouse buildings in these transactions. One thing I will point out is the bottom end of the range. So if we look at the 3 most newly constructed properties, that being comparable number 3, 5, and 6. So 2390 McPhillips, this is the Lady Joyce apartment, built in 2015, sold in 2020 at a 5% cap rate, with 90 units in place, so significant property. 5% cap rate there. This is a luxury apartment, 703 St. Anne's. This is built in 2020, sold in 2021, 5.3% cap rate. Again, luxury apartments backing onto the Seine River. Deluxe build out for each of those. And finally, 100 Southview, number 6, built in 2015, sold in 2021 at a cap rate of 4.95%. These are the Lumen townhomes. So you have your own garage, driveway, yard, balcony, luxury accommodation, and they're relatively large as well. So that's the bottom end of the market. You're not going to see lower cap rates for existing income in a property. The only thing you'll see below that, which is not permissible to accept as cap rates for assessment, is purchases of properties where the investor is looking to take the property out of rent control, renovate, boost the income, and of course increase their return. Those are not acceptable transactions either by the assessment methodology or appraisal methodology. So we don't present any of those here. Obviously those trades happen out there, but they're not to be considered as true cap rate representation. So that is the background on cap rate. We're looking at a 1903 property that has been renovated for multifamily use. It's going to fall towards the top end of the range. The structure obviously is what it is. You're going to have some additional costs, which will lower the revenue overall for the investor. So we've applied a cap rate towards the upper end of the range, but not at the upper end of the range of 5.75% for the multifamily portion of this property. This is summarized on page 22. And you can see that we wind up at a market value of $8,791,000 for the multifamily. We can move forward to the commercial space here. I end up ultimately at a higher value than what the city has proposed in their revised assessment. I won't spend any particular time on this. I did not have an indication of the size of the commercial portion of the property in the income and expense that was submitted, so we're unaware of any difference in the size. So our valuation is based on the original size of the commercial property as presented by the city. The actual income for the subject property was $119,196, which is what we've used in our valuation, which is summarized on page number 27. I will leave my presentation at that. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on the commercial side. But our value for the commercial portion was $1,305,000 prior to any knowledge of a change in area for the commercial property. That is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ken, questions?
Just wondering for page 17, the cap rate sales.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering if any of those sales are multi-use properties.
No, none of these properties are multi-use properties. These are all simply apartment transactions. There is no commercial portion to either any of these, so that may also have an upward lift on the subject property as well overall.
That's all my questions. Actually, sorry, I did have one more.
Pardon me.
On your page 22. I noticed that on your page A2 as well, your page A2 indicates $4,800 in, sorry, if you go to page A2.
Yeah.
It indicates that there's some storage income of $4,800.
I see that, yes.
Yeah, and on your page 22.
Yes.
I don't believe, why was it not included in your income portion of the workup?
So if we look at page A2 there, it indicates storage rent of $4,800, and then you have vacancy of $1,720 on that. So it actually comes down to $3,100 roughly. And it doesn't, I don't have any indication whether this is from commercial on the main floor or whether it's related to the residential. Storage space use comes and goes often. It's not necessarily a reliable ongoing source of revenue, so we didn't include it. Typically, we include parking revenue as well as laundry revenue for multifamily properties, but they don't have that in this instance.
Oh. On your page A2, it says they budgeted $4,800 and they were kind of expecting that.
I see that, yes.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Bill, any questions?
Page 17 on your capitalization rate.
Yes.
Actual. This address is 92 Princess subject. That would be downtown, correct?
That's correct.
Would it be fair to say that the majority of these are outside of downtown?
Yes, that's absolutely fair.
Well, how would that impact the cap rate?
Well,
If these were downtown, would they be different?
so two-part question there, I guess. So what we're looking at here as far as these transactions are traditional apartment blocks. So you're looking at 2.5, 3-story walk-ups or towers in some instances, but traditional apartment buildings. So you wouldn't find these downtown to start with. Generally speaking, as an overall statement, I think the markets that you find in the suburbs, such as Kildare, St. Anne's, Southview, Ferndale, and St. Boniface, etc., Portage Avenue, are generally viewed to be stronger, perhaps less troublesome than downtown markets. The location of the subject property in the West Exchange is less than optimal in terms of a location for an investor. They're generally looking at safety in their purchases. So the west side is obviously a bit different than the east side, where all of the new construction has happened on waterfront. So location certainly in the downtown area would give you a lift to the cap rate that you would provide based on the risk that the investor would take on in buying a property such as that.
You have 60 suites for your work up in the apartment at $13.32 a suite, correct?
I believe that was the average rent, yes.
And the cities was a little bit lower than that, but you ended up with a lower NOI because of the expenses, correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right. And what was the difference there in the expenses?
Well, the cities is model driven, so they are basing their valuation on or their valuation is based on the model. So it's a mass appraisal model that aggregates all the income and expense information and drills it down. Now, I guess part of my comment would be you're not going to find a lot of 1903 warehouse conversions in their model, so it's not necessarily going to fairly reflect the costs that one would typically have for a property such as this. So again, heating will be one issue for properties of this size. Just general maintenance. Your structure is considerably older, so there's going to be, in many cases, more repair and maintenance that would be present for anybody that would own a property such as this. The summary of our stabilization of the expenses is on page number 16. So these are based on the actuals, and we've stabilized them for typical market norms where appropriate.
Okay, and I see on page 22, the ratio is about 45.67, not about, it is 45.67%.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's where the difference comes in. I see, okay. All right, I have no further questions.
Richard,
I have none, thank you.
thank you very much. Let's move on to the next one. The next one will be 433 River. Kim, when you are ready.
Okay. The subject property is 433 River. The roll number is 120-324-60500. It's an apartment multi-use property. It's 8 stories high. It was built in 1985 and it has 123 suites with 76 indoor parking stalls and 16 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. It's in the Osborne Village area. The property is a nonprofit, so I feel that using a nonprofit income statement or income or expenses would not be reflective of market value. So we're going to be looking to the market for valuation. On page 4 is just some information on the subject property. Just at the very beginning, it just offers unique mix of residential, nonprofit rental apartments for seniors, along with active and social recreational program. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. For the apartment, we use average rents of $869 to get a potential income of $1,284,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $1,242,000. And we use the 51% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $608,000. Capped at 5.7%, we have an estimated market value of $10,670,000. For the exempt retail portion, the estimated operating income is $35,000, capped at 7.5%. The estimated value is $478,000, and the retail for the taxable portion, their NOI is estimated NOI is $95,000, and capped at 7.5%. The estimated value is $1,272,000. And for the parking structure, the estimated NOI is $35,000, capped at 7%. The estimated value is $511,000. On page 6 is some information with regards to the number of apartment suites, the number of parking stalls, and the number and the leasable areas and the rates and the model rates that were applied. On page 7 are some rent comparables. The rents that the model has applied is about $869, but rents for similar units in the area are higher. So the market rents do support the model rate that's been applied. It actually supports a slightly higher rate. On page 7, on the bottom of page 7, are some expense comparables ranging from 43 to 50%. That supports what the model has estimated at about 51%. On page 8 are some lease rate comparables. They range from about $14 to $21, which supports the rates that the model has applied, which range from about $12 to $18. On page 9 and 10 is information on how we derived our cap rates along with some cap rate sales to substantiate the model that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. On page 11 and 12 is some Altus cap rate information. On page 14 is the income statement supplied by the owner. On page 15 are some CMHC market rents. If you're to use the CMHC market rents to estimate the potential income for the subject property, the estimate would be about $1,478,000, which supports the model potential at $1,284,000. So you can see the model rents are below market. So when you look at the subject property, the model rents are supported by the market, and the market rents are a little bit higher, and the model expenses and cap rate are also supported by the market. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $12,949,000.
Question, Trevor?
Yes, just quickly. So looking at the cover page there, classification 60, the assessed value is $1,801,000. When I flip forward to page 5 and add the two class 60 valuations together, it comes to $1,783,000. Is that the value that's being defended?
He's adding.
I'm sorry, what were you looking at?
Sorry, Cam. So if we look at page 5.
Yep.
And the first two columns are your class 60.
Yep.
So if we add the two of those together, it comes to $1,783,000. It's similar to the last property. It's different than the original assessed value for that class 60 portion.
$1,783,000.
That's what I came up with adding them. Yeah.
That would be the value that I would be supporting instead of the $1,801,000.
Okay.
And I get the feeling that sometimes the business assessments, they get updated, and in this case maybe that's why the values are different.
Okay.
What did we adjust that one to?
1,073,000.
So his grand total changes too then.
So just going back briefly, page number 4, you've got some text here with regard to Villa Cabrini itself. Looking at the bullet points towards the top of the property. So the property includes large multi-purpose area and second floor outdoor roof terrace, main floor lounge, library, coffee shop. These areas would be included in the gross floor area for the multifamily portion, right?
Yes.
So that's, if we look at page number 7, that would boost the gross floor area per unit. So the 857 that's being shown for the subject would take into account these kind of non-standard apartment areas, correct?
Yeah, it's pretty much the gross floor area divided by the number of suites. So that's how that number is calculated.
Right. So in relation to a normal market apartment, that figure would be somewhat high based on these additional areas. Is that fair to say?
Potentially.
Okay. So then just quickly looking at the comparables that are there for on page number 7 again. Number 2, 880 Cambridge. So this is in River Heights, I believe. Property owned and managed by WRE. And there is a question in here. I'm just reading some text about it. So as it says, it's been completely renovated, brand new kitchens, brand new bathrooms, all new flooring and lighting. Second one to look at, comparable number 3, 1231 grant. Similarly, active management, so professional management. It's been fully renovated as well, new kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, fixtures, lighting. Would these comps be comparable to the subject property?
Well, if I took your word for the those 2 properties, maybe they would be in better condition than the subject property.
Okay, great. And do I have any other questions? Just looking quickly at capitalization rate. I'm not going to belabor this point. When I read page number 9, the second paragraph, and this is the description of how the model is done, I believe it states for the 2023 general assessment, cap rates were derived from model generated estimates of net operating income and sale prices that were time adjusted to April 1, 2021. So the valuation date. So the actual capitalization rates that are input into the model are estimates rather than based on the actuals of transactions. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And I think Mr. Newman mentioned this earlier. The national markets Altus information on page 11 would include markets that would generally have lower capitalization rates and higher values than Winnipeg, such as Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Ottawa. Is that fair to say?
I would say Toronto and Vancouver definitely have lower cap rates. I'm not sure about the other cities.
Okay. And the page 12 Altus information, again, as Mr. Newman had mentioned, that would include property transactions where the properties were purchased for their future renovated value. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, as far as I know, some properties that were sold for renovation and renovated afterwards, they were included. But I would also like to say it's like just because that was the case, that doesn't mean that they are excluded for valuation purposes, as I've seen in many appraisal reports where properties that were sold and renovated afterwards were used for cap rate analysis. So it appears that it is valid for valuation purposes.
So I really don't want to go on about this, but in having mentioned that, the valuation model that we are looking at is a retrospective model based on a valuation date of April 1, 2021, and we're looking at information up to that time period and the property as it sits, right? So we're not looking at the future potential of that property. We're looking at it as a snapshot in that point of time and looking backwards for assessment. Is that correct?
I mean, if you look at the yes, if you look at a sale, if it was being renovated afterwards, all you would know is the sale price and the net operating income. So when you look at the sale price and the net operating income, that's what the indicated cap rate is without looking into the future.
Okay, those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Richard,
I have nothing, sir.
Bill,
Yeah, on page, sorry, page 6, page 6. Parking structure. You have 39 stalls at 7650. I
Yes.
have a couple of questions on that. So on your page 2, you have, or page 1, sorry, page 1, property description, you have a total of 92 parking stalls. So where are the other 53? 3 spots.
Yeah, I think some of the parking stalls are, I think, for the residents, and some of it is for available to the public for use.
Okay. So the 39 belongs to this property then, and that's it. We don't have to concern ourselves with the other ones, and they don't affect anything on this analysis.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes with apartments, some stalls are included with their rent,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay, but those remaining 53 spots are totally outside of this role. They do not affect this property at all.
oh, they do. If there are parking stalls associated with the apartment building, the apartment rent rate would be slightly higher as compared to, say, if an apartment had no parking stalls, the rental rate would be lower.
So then the model is considering all 92 spots then when it calculates the rent for this
Yes.
property. Okay. But as a separate dedicated parking, you're only using 39 spots. Indoor.
Yes, that's what they've allocated for rental to the general public.
That's what they've allocated to the general public. Correct. Okay.
Yeah, say like say
Okay. Yeah,
okay.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah. So these 39 are for the general public.
Yeah, say if you or I went down there and we could actually pay to park in those stalls, whereas the stalls are allocated for the resident for the apartment, we couldn't just go and park in their stalls.
Okay. All right. Now back to page 6 again. The second question. So you have a 7650 for net rent per stall. How did you arrive at that number?
We looked at parking lots around the area, and they basically calculated what their rental rates were and subtracted their operating expenses, and to arrive at a net rate per stall, and that's how we calculated the 7650.
Do you have the backup analysis in your presentation for that?
Unfortunately, the chart that we put in to support these the parking rates, I forgot to include it, but I am looking at the chart right now, and for say a similarly located parking lot that's unheated on 374 Taché. It's just outside the downtown area, just like the subject property. The subject property is just outside the downtown area, and their stabilized net rate is $109. And there's a couple. So unfortunately, I didn't include that chart in this information, but that's where we got the information from.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
I've already been to, right, Richard? You said no?
No.
Okay, I'm good. Let's move on. Trevor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So subject property that we're dealing with is 433 River Avenue. This is known as Villa Cabrini. It is a seniors nonprofit facility designed to provide affordable housing for seniors that require it. It is located in the Osborne Village area on the east side of Osborne Street, adjacent to where the gas station theater is. I believe it's still located immediately there. I know it had some issues at one point. Anyway, that is the location of the property. There are three components to it. Obviously, the multifamily section on the upper floors, the main floor, commercial units, and then there is the underground parking aspect as well. So it's a little bit complex, so bear with me. There is also a institutional school tax, or rather institutional exempt portion of the building. This is due to one of the tenancies being a Legion located in one of the commercial units. So it does complicate matters somewhat because we value the commercial. We have to break out that individual unit, but I'll show you that when we get to it. I will apologize to start with, as some of the text was not changed before this was submitted to be based on our actual valuation. So if I can get you to flip to page number, I guess it's 2 of my presentation. The institutional school tax exempt portion will actually be $9,854,000. You want to make a note of that. The other taxable will be $1,697,000. And the institutional exempt is $461,000.
What a grand total,
I'm afraid I did not put the grand total together, but I can do so for you if you take the time. Let's move forward into the brief here. So somewhat complex property. I'll try and keep it as concise as I can. Page number 3 gives you some background on the property. Subject was built in 1985. And we have a total of 123 units, all of in the multifamily portion, all of them being 1-bedroom units. Again, we have that commercial main floor with a number of different commercial units, as well as the parkade. Background with regard to the assessment is shown also on page number 3. And you can see that for you there. Let's move forward. Photographs of the property begin on page 5. A couple of exteriors, one in the front, one in the rear lane. And then we move into the property itself. So we start with the multifamily. This is the lobby on the main floor. The second photo on page number 6 at the bottom is their multi-purpose / dining room. Then we move into the units themselves. Property is original to 1985. They only replace things when needed. They haven't gone through any refresh or renovation. So you can see the Euro style cabinetry in the kitchen, the tiled flooring, etc. Again, replacement only happens when breakage occurs, etc. So the units, again, shown on page number 8, all of them being 1-bedroom, all of them being slightly smaller than what one would typically find as a norm. They, in looking to provide shelter to seniors in need, they've focused on 1-bedroom units and made them slightly smaller in order to provide as many units as they can. So that's some background on that. The gross floor area drives up the overall suite number in when you look at the comparisons that the city has in their brief. Moving on, commercial is shown on page 9. One of the restaurants, we have a pharmacy shown at the bottom of page 9, just a local pharmacy. The Legion is shown at the top of page 10, as well as the bottom, and then a vacant unit on page number 11. So that's the structure. Let's move forward to page 12. I'm not going to go through this in detail. The upper stories are all the multifamily. These include main floor includes a reception area for the residential area, as well as some internal offices for the residential. Second floor includes common areas of a dining room, a library, and meeting room, as well as a small kitchen for the dining room for the subject property. Now, it's not an assisted living facility. They don't provide meals, but that facility is there in the property. Site is shown on page number 13. On the north side of River, again, roughly half a block east of Osborne, and the location on page number 14. So in Osborne Village, the majority of your commercial centers around Osborne itself, obviously, kind of the main block being between River and Stradbrook, as well as the offshoot of the development with MLCC, Shoppers Drug Mart, and Safeway on the west side of Osborne there. We're located on the east side. Let's move forward into the valuation. And let me just skip forward here. Our income and expense information as submitted to City of Winnipeg indicates a gross rental revenue for the subject property overall for 2020, inclusive of the MHRC subsidy of $1,192,190. This gives you an overall average rental rate of $808. I've given you the CMHC market stats below this. The subject property would fall into Fort Rouge. Obviously, Fort Rouge is a relatively large area with very dense apartment development. It's not necessarily going to reflect what you would achieve on the market for this particular property. We do also give you our market study for one-bedroom rents that would be more comparable to the subject property. I've got a number of them here. We tried to focus on the subject area. So 393 River Avenue, also River, so quite close by. $808 is their average rent. 780 Osborne, $780. Lindale, obviously in St. Boniface, $779. 141 River, $777. 105 Clark is also in the immediate area, $875, so a little bit higher. You can see the remainder of them there are ranged between $759 and $899 with an average of $811. So right in line with what the subject property is achieving. So we believe that that market rental average and the overall gross revenue is indicative of market for the subject property based on our study of the market. Property also had a small amount of parking revenue for the apartment building, which I believe we have included in our analysis for the subject. Let's move forward. The expenses. We've utilized the same 3.2% vacancy as the city, and we have stabilized 3-year history of the expenses, actual expenses for the subject property at the bottom of page 18. Their actuals ranged from $552,000 in 2018 up to a high of $620,000 in 2020. We've stabilized this based on the actuals as well as market norms at $571,512. This, once we look at percentages, gives us an expense allowance of 49.15%, which is well within range of norms for properties such as this. We can move on to capitalization rate. On my page number 19, again, we have our same market study at the bottom of the page, indicating a basic range between 5.25% and 5.75%, with some falling outside of the, slightly outside of that, the baseline being 5% for new, well-built, well-located properties. We have the same Colliers and CB Richard Ellis information backing up the range of 5 to 6% overall. In addition to this, we're now looking at a nonprofit facility. And I'll just direct your attention quickly to my page number 19. And bear with me here. Looking at valuing affordable housing properties for property assessment is difficult, as you can't directly compare them to comparable sales to utilize in determining their market value. So there are no transactions of nonprofit properties on the market that you can develop a cap rate from. A, there's no sales of them. B, their income and expense, or their income rather, is significantly different in some cases than, not the subject case, but in some cases from what market would actually be. So you can't actually derive a fair cap rate from what they are producing either. Can't legitimately compare these properties to standard market apartment transactions because there's considerable restrictions and burdens, including rental income restrictions, rental market restrictions, smaller pool of potential tenants, in some cases, not all, which we deal with in our stabilization, additional operating expenses, physical condition in some cases, as well as disposition restrictions. This is all backed up by an expert in the field, Mr. Richard Polton. I'm not going to read his text here. Each of you have heard it from me before. You can review it there if you wish. Essentially, he sums up the fact that you can't directly compare nonprofit multifamily properties to for-profit multifamily properties on an apples-to-apples basis. There's an additional risk factor that needs to be taken into account when assigning cap rates to these properties. So, what would an appropriate cap rate for the subject property be? Well, we have slightly undersized properties that are relatively original to their 1985 date. It is well located in Osborne Village. However, it is also a nonprofit facility. So as an astute investor looking at this property, you'll know and realize that the tenants that are in there have the right to remain in their units on the basis that they've signed up for. So you're not looking at a standard transaction. So you can't buy this property and immediately turn it into a market apartment. The residents have the right to remain in their units on the financial basis that they're currently in there. So looking at the subject property, with all of those factors taken into account, it would fall at the upper end of the standard range at 6% in our considered estimation. This takes into account the location, all of them being one beds, both the pluses and the minuses of the property. This is summarized on my page number 24. So we're slightly under on income, slightly higher on expenses, and we cap it at 6%, giving us a market value of $9,854,000. Moving forward to the commercial side, we have two portions. We have the Legion, which is shown in the bottom of that chart, 3,161 square feet at $13. The remaining of part of the commercial is at the top. These are the actual in-place rents as of the valuation date. So if you're buying this property, these are the rents you're getting. They're not changing instantly. Nor are you located in the heart of the village, so you're not necessarily going to achieve greater rents than these either. That being said, we've provided you backup for the rents that are in place. These are all well-located retail centers throughout Winnipeg, generally in good residential areas of the city, and you can see the rental rates that they're achieving. They range in size, date of construction, etc., obviously, but we tried to get them as close to the valuation date as possible. Our overall range runs from $12 to $18 generally. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on those. If we go back and look at the in-place rents, they range from $12 to $19 in one particular unit. So we believe the in-place rents are certainly supported by the market evidence. So we're using that. The vacancy rate we've assigned is 6%, as shown at the bottom of page 26, based on market evidence from the Johnson report. I am not going to delve into the expense allowances. Each of you gentlemen has heard from me on that. Suffice it to say, we're using 7%. Based on the evidence in my brief, the city is using 3%. Shortfall remains the same as the city. And we can move on to capitalization rate for the commercial portion. Now, what I've given you here, I think we're actually in agreement with the city, so I'm not going to even touch on this aspect. We've assigned the same cap rate of 7.5% based on our market study that matching the city's capitalization rate in this instance. Page number 31 summarizes that there is a typo at the bottom of the page. The estimate of value by the income approach for the commercial portion, exclusive of the institutional exempt portion, which is the Legion, is $1,239,000. So that bottom half of the chart gives you our value for commercial. The top half of the chart gives you our value for the institutional exempt portion. We can move forward from there to the parkade. The income and expense information for the subject property. If we look at the data in there, we have a gross revenue of $66,526, less expenses of $36,072, giving us a net income of $32,055 for the property. If we go back, the net income for the prior 5 years ranges somewhat, but you can see the figure there for you. So using the in-place net revenue, we come to $458,000 capitalized at 7%. Moving forward to page 33, again, a little bit of revision here. Institutional school tax exempt, so that's the apartment portion, comes to $9,854,000. The other taxable, so the commercial portion, is $1,697,000, and the institutional exempt is $461,000. The income and expense for all of the portions of the building is included in the addenda. That is my presentation. Thank you.
$12,120,000, what you come up with, right?
Overall,
Is that right?
I
Overall?
didn't actually run it, but I will for you. 12,012,000, yeah,
12,012,000
and $12,000.
and $12,000.
Yeah.
Questions on that, Kim?
Yeah, I just have one.
Is this room being used after this?
Yeah, I think so.
Might be me. Or you're gonna say,
You're saying that the in-place rents for the commercial space was a certain amount. Where on the back of your brief does it show that? I just want to see it.
I'll make sure I have the right year for you. So it's a complex property, not to just to help explain, there's 3 different management firms involved. So there's a couple of different submissions here, all of which were sent into the city. So the rents for the commercial portion I believe are shown starting on A16 of the addenda. And then I think I may have provided 2 different years for that as well. So not sure if that's all in there. In any case, it's the same information that's been submitted to the city.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No. I like when I first looked at it, I didn't notice any. I thought they had only entered in some gross rents. So on your page 32,
it would be $3,000.
sorry, I guess on your page 31, your net income for on the first chart is 34,596. Does that seem right?
We're on page 31.
Yeah.
Yes, for the institutional exempt, yeah.
Okay, and then for the lower chart, it's 92,000.
That's correct, yeah.
And then I guess on page 32, the net income is about 32,000 for the parkade.
That's correct.
Okay. I added that up. That works out to about 159,000. Does that seem reasonable?
Well, I haven't added them up, but what I've done, I guess, Ken, is break them out into their classifications for easy review.
Okay. And on page A14.
Yeah.
So I think you calculated 159,000 or so when I added them up. And page 814 is indicating about 174,000. About a 14,000 or 14 or 15,000 difference. Do you know what might be the discrepancy or?
Well, we're going through the same exercise that the city is in the valuation process in applying appropriate market vacancy and making adjustments where needed in the expenses to bring them in alignment with market. Actually, sorry, we're looking at the commercial part here. We've got a number of things on the go here. So this particular commercial property has had some very significant vacancy, well over 15%. In prior years, I was not seeking anything additional to that. They have obviously one unit that is fully vacant there from what I was showing. Often there's more than one, so that might be where the difference lies.
Okay, that would be all my questions.
Richard,
Just one, you mentioned major expenses required for this building. Trevor, did you have a number? Did you have a quote? Anything to go with that?
Oh, on the capital expenditures?
Yes.
Yes, I'm afraid I don't have a quote on that aspect. They hadn't provided that to me.
Okay, so you made the comment on what basis?
Well, in an interview with property management for the property.
Thank you.
Now, in fairness, they have dealt with a few of their capital expenditures, but not entirely.
I understand. Thank you. No further questions.
Bill?
I do not have any questions.
Okay, let's move on to the next property then.
Mr. Chair, I could use break if you're okay with that, or you wanna?
I guess we could do that, but I think we have to be out of here by 1, right?
No, the meetings are.
Are the meetings over there? Okay, let's take a little break. It's a good idea.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
I think everybody could use it. I guess I should ask, Cam, are you okay with that break?
I think it's okay, but I was just gonna also say that there's one more property, so.
I know. So I'll call the meeting back to order. We're dealing with item on 370 Donald. Cam, when you are ready.
The subject property is 370 Donald. The roll number is 130-527-91000. It's an apartment multi-use property that's 5 stories high. It was built in 1906, so we have an effective year built of 1966. It has 38 suites and no parking. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 are some interior photos of the subject property from the property manager's website. On page 5 is our income valuation summary. For the apartment, we used average rents of $905 to get a potential income of $412,000. We used a 4.7% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $393,000. And we used a 52% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $184,000. Capped at 5.15%, we have an estimated market value of $3,590,000. For the restaurant portion of the income, the net operating income, the estimated net operating income is $38,000 and capped at 6.25%. The estimated market value is $610,000. On page 6 is some information on the subject property regarding there being 38 units and the lease area being 2,616 square feet. The model rate applied for the lease area is $16.52. On page 7 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 8 are some comparable leases that range from $16 to $20. It's supports what the model is estimated at about $16. On page 9, is a summary of their 2020 and 2019 income statement. Their 2020 income is $452,000. Their expenses are $560,000, but it included items such as interest and depreciation. So removing some of those items that we don't include for calculating their net operating income, their operating expenses are about, for 2020 is about $243,000, and their NOI is about $209,000. You can see in 2019, their NOI is about $257,000. So to sort of to stabilize it a bit, we use their average income from 2019 and 2020. We use their average expenses from 2019 and 2020 to get a estimated net operating income of $233,000. So their actual net operating income of $233,000 supports the model net operating income of $223,000. And this is for the apartment and the commercial. On page 10 and 11 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales to substantiate the model. The range is of 3.6% to 5.74%. Page 12 and 13 is some Altus cap rate information. On page 15 is the income statement supplied by the owner. So when you look at the actual net operating income of the subject property, it supports the model NOI, and the model cap rate that has been used is supported by the market. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $4,237,000.
Trevor, questions?
Yes, just 3. Given workload at the city, I'm guessing you haven't had the opportunity to inspect this property?
I have definitely been in the kitchen portion of it, but I can't remember if I've been in the apartment portion.
But you haven't inspected it for assessment purposes, right?
For the current cycle, no.
Okay. Looking at page number 7, the comparables that are here, you've indicated 38 one-bedrooms for the subject property. So the comps are largely based on being comparable to one-bedrooms?
Yes.
Okay. And then looking at page number 9, the actual 2020 NOI that you come down to is 209,843, correct? So
Yeah.
that would be under the projected NOI of 233.
Yes.
Okay, those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Richard, question?
I have none.
No?
Oh, none.
Okay. Bill?
Yes, for the restaurant portion, rent per square foot, have you provided comparables to come up with that?
Yes.
And where are those?
On page 8.
Okay,
That's it?
those are restaurants?
I believe so, yes.
All right.
And
you.
when you look at their commercial income for the year, on my page 15 is about 68,000. So even if you remove some expenses from the 68,000, I think it supports the 43,000 that we've used.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. On with your presentation. Trevor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 370 Donald is our property here today. It's another heritage warehouse conversion to multifamily use in the West Exchange. It is located, well, on Donald Street on the west side. As you head south, it is, I guess you would say, adjacent or overlooks where Giant Tiger is located, if that helps you locate it. That is where the property is. Originally built in 1905 and 1909. So similarly, if you look at the front of the exterior of the building, you can see the additional floors that were put on in 1909 at the top of the property. And it has been renovated for multifamily use in more recent time, obviously. The suites, we have 38 units here, but all of them are studio apartments. We don't have any actual one-bedroom units in this property. So we're looking at bachelor studio units for the subject. Let's move into the photos quickly. So a couple of the exteriors. On page number 4, again, there's no on-site parking here for the subject property. We move inside at the bottom of page number 5, and then into the units themselves on page 6 and onto page 7. So if you look at the top of page 6, you can see that your living and sleeping areas are in the same room. With the kitchen obviously being kind of a galley style or built against the side of the unit. Moving forward to page 8, some of the, I guess there's a bike storage. There is a bike storage area in on the main floor. Some lobby area, bottom of page 8, and then again, just a different example of the sleeping arrangement in a different unit at the top of page 9. So again, not a bedroom, and it's open to the remainder of the property. So that is the inside. I've shown you photos of the commercial at the bottom. We're not disputing the commercial. That's just there for you to see. The location is shown on page number 12. And we can move forward into the valuation itself. Property had gross rental revenue based on full occupancy for 2020 of $414,508, with an average of $909 per unit. Centennial has an average of $775 for bachelors. Now, subject property is brick and beam studio apartments. It's going to get more than the basic bachelor amount. And that's reflected in what they're charging at $909. We give you comparables for that on page 15. And you can see that it's in line with market based on the comps that are provided there. So we have run with the in-place rental income as it is at market. Again, it is under rent control, so the rents are what they are, and they can't be lifted without any change to the property. So any investor would be buying the in-place revenue. There is some laundry revenue, not parking revenue, and we've included that in our valuation. The vacancy for the subject property was actually at $32,542 in 2020, which is greater than the 4.7% being allowed in the city's valuation. We have not increased the vacancy. We're deferring to the 4.7% in our valuation for the subject. And that should be taken into account in the overall valuation. Typically, vacancy does run a little bit higher here, but we've accounted for that in other ways. The expense allowance, our stabilization of the 3-year history of the property shown on page 17. Again, these are the actuals for the property. We've made adjustments where necessary, and used averages where appropriate. So the range of expenses runs from 212,000 to 232,000, with an upward trend between 2018 and 2021. We were missing the 2019 year because it wasn't available online. And our stabilized expense allowance is 220,166, again, based on the actuals of the subject. Moving on to capitalization rate, we're in the same situation as our previous warehouse conversion to multifamily, very similar original date of construction, 1905 and 1909 for the subject property. And I believe the other was pre-1910 as well. Our capitalization rate study is shown on page 18. Again, our range is typically between 5.25% and 5.75%, with some outliers, but a baseline of 5%. The subject property, very similar to our previous one at 92 Princess, it would be viewed by investors not as falling within the typical ranges of the market brokerages. So the Collier's information, as well as the CB Richard information, of course, does not address specifically multifamily properties such as this. They would not be your typical investment asset for the majority of institutional investors. Again, we have an original structure of 1905, 1909, with all of the issues that come along with that, including slightly increased heating costs, as well as other issues. Somewhat higher vacancy in the subject property than the market norm. We have attributed a cap rate of 5.75%, so kind of at the upper end of, or towards the upper end of our market study, or the narrow window of 5.25% to 5.75% of our market study on page 18. Obviously, we have caps of premium properties at 5% and lower end properties well above 6%. We've attributed a cap rate of 5.75% to the subject property. It would fall towards the upper end of the range, but it has been recently done. So 5.75% is certainly fair. It could be higher. Keep in mind, we did not ask for any increased allowance for vacancy for the subject property. So this is summarized on my page number 23. And it gives us a final market value of $3,083,000 for the residential component, and we're not disputing the commercial component. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Questions? Cam?
So you're on mute, Cam.
We don't hear you, Cam.
Thank you.
There.
On your page A2.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a residential potential of 430,000, but there's a vacancy of 32,000. Is that correct?
That appears to be what they're indicating. You're missing the residential discount, though.
Yeah. So I was looking at the laundry revenue. It seems like that laundry revenue would be inclusive of vacancy. Is that correct?
The laundry would be inclusive of vacancy?
Yes, is that correct?
I'm not sure that I follow the question, Kim.
Would the laundry revenue account for vacancy already?
No, I don't believe so. We're looking at vacancy of 32,000 plus.
Okay. So you don't think it includes vacancy?
Again, I'm just trying to follow the question. So the laundry figure, does it
Yes.
include vacancy?
Is it inclusive of vacancy?
I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Neither do I.
Oh, okay. Well, the thing is on page 23. You've put your potential in there of 414,000, and you put your parking income of 202,548, and you're taking a vacancy off of the parking income.
So that's mislabeled, and I do apologize for that. That's actually laundry income. So yes, if you're stating that there's vacancy being applied to the laundry revenue, yes, that is the case. I guess my view on vacancy is that if you have a vacant unit, there's nobody in there either parking or using the laundry, so it would equally apply to those revenue sources.
Okay, I guess that's where I was getting at. I'm sorry, I was confused with the parking there and then the laundry in the back.
Yeah, my apologies. That's mislabeling.
Yeah, but I guess maybe the point I was trying to make is that the 2,548 is paid for by the people that are paid for by the tenants that are in there, and the tenants that are in there already include the vacancy. So I just thought it might have been double counting, but
I see.
that would be all my questions.
Richard?
I have none, thank you.
None? Bill?
So for the restaurant, okay, for the apartment, you want a value of 3,083,000.
Correct.
And for the restaurant, you're deferring to the cities of 610,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Isn't it 647?
Yeah.
But you have 647.
They're showing 610. This is the same issue as the other ones. It's 610 on in their valuation here.
Which one is right, Kim? 610 or 647?
610.
610? You're going for that 610 number?
Yes.
610 is the number.
Okay.
The grand total changes.
That's the only question I had. Clarification there, please. Thank you.
And I've got none. So that concludes the matter. 1 second. We have heard all the items scheduled, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Been a long
Thank you.
day.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.